Chapter 9. Another thing Miss Smith did was exchange her old radio batteries for charged ones. Some folks in our lane had had radios, so I knew about them, but, as usual, not close up. Miss Smith sat in the main room on a glossy wood cabinet. As soon as we got home Saturday night, she put the new batteries in and started it up. Voices came out talking. Miss Smith sighed. I wanted music, she said. She reached up and switched it off. I suppose we'll have to hear all about the war eventually, she yawned and sat without moving. I thought of the food we'd bought, apples, meat. I stood up. Want me to make some tea, miss? I asked, by way of suggestion. Cut some bread and dripping? She frowned. Of course not. I sat back down, disappointed. I was hungry again, but then we'd already eaten twice that day, if you counted the bread we swiped in the morning. It's nearly time for supper, Miss Smith said. She gave me a sort of smile, although, like Ma'am's smiles, it didn't make her look happy. I'll make supper. It's my job to take care of you. Right. But then she got up and she did make supper, a huge supper, ham, boiled potatoes, little round green things called peas that came out of a can, tomatoes like the one Jamie swiped, only cut in thick slices, bread with butter, so many different colors and shapes and smells. The peas rolled around my mouth until I bit them and they squished. Supper was like a miracle. It was all that food all at once, and yet Jamie, worn out and cross, refused to touch anything except ham. I wanted to smack him. Hot food and meat? Miss Smith might not want us, but she was feeding us fine. Not to mention I had a shoe. That meant she didn't mind if I went outside. Leave him, Miss Smith said tiredly when I started to tell Jamie off. To Jamie, she said, you can't have second helpings of anything until you've taken one bite of everything on your plate. There had been pieces of cloth on the table folded under the forks. Before she started eating, Miss Smith had put hers on her lap, so we had too. Now, Jamie took his cloth and used it to cover his head. I want ham, he said through the cloth. You may have more ham after you've tried a bite of everything, Miss Smith said. You're allowed to dislike food, but not before you've tasted it. And get that napkin off your head. Jamie hurled his plate against the wall, and it shattered. Miss Smith screamed. I tackled Jamie. I grabbed a piece of tomato off the floor and mashed it between his lips. He spat it at me. Eat it, I roared. I grabbed peas and shoved those down his gullet. He choked and gagged. Miss Smith yanked me loose. Ada, she said. Ada, stop it. You'll hurt him. Hurt him? When it was him disobeying? Bedtime, Jamie. Miss Smith grabbed his flailing arm. Bath, then bed. She pulled him off the floor and carried him, kicking and screaming up the stairs. I'll kill him, I thought. I'll murder him for acting this way. I found my crutches and got to my feet. I picked up the broken pieces of plate and the food scattered across the floor. I wiped up the water I'd spilled when I knocked over my glass. I could hear Jamie screaming upstairs. Miss Smith was either bathing him or slaughtering him. Either was fine by me. When I finished cleaning the kitchen, I climbed the stairs, dead easy with the crutches. The screaming had stopped. I put clean water in the bath for you, Miss Smith said. Did you finish your supper? I nodded. I was still hungry, but my stomach was turning circles and I couldn't eat. There was hot water, soap, a towel. I already felt clean, but the water was soothing. Afterward, I put on new clothes called pajamas that were supposed to be just to sleep in. Tops and bottoms, both blue. The fabric was so soft that for a moment I held it against my face. It was all soft, this place, soft and good and frightening. At home, I knew who I was. When I went into the bedroom, Jamie was curled into a little ball snoring, and Miss Smith was dozing in the chair beside the bed. She's not a nice person, I reminded myself, and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, I jumped awake, the way I did when Ma'am brought home guests. I sat up and clutched the blankets to me. My breath came in ragged gasps. Miss Smith said, It's all right, Ada. You're all right. I turned. She was still sitting in the chair beside Jamie. Moonlight came through the window. Miss Smith's face was in shadow. My heart hammered. My head whirled. You're all right, Miss Smith repeated. Did you have a nightmare? Did I? I didn't know. Jamie lay beside me, his mouth slightly open, his breathing soft and regular. Were there bombs? I asked. She shook her head. No, I didn't hear anything, but I woke up too. She held her wrist up to a patch of moonlight. It's gone 3 o'clock. I didn't mean to fall asleep here. I've slept in this chair most of the night. Somehow I could hear her smiling. I haven't slept well for a long time, since Becky died. I don't sleep well. I asked, when did she die? Miss Smith cleared her throat. 3 years ago. 3 years ago, next Tuesday. She hadn't slept well for 3 years? It's part of why I didn't want to take you, she continued. It's nothing to do with you. I'm always so much worse in the fall, and then the days get so short, and well, I'm never very good in the winter either. Never was, not even when I was your age. I hate the darkness and the cold. I nodded. I hated them too. and winter chilblains covered my hands and feet, and they itched and burned like crazy. I asked, "Was Becky your kid?" "My kid?" Miss Smith gave a bark of harsh laughter. "No, she was my friend, my best friend. We were at university together. This was her house. She left it to me." "And butter?" I said, remembering. "She gave me butter long before she died. She wanted me to like horses the way she did. It didn't take." "What killed her?" I asked. "Pneumonia. That's a sickness in the lungs." I nodded. Talking to Miss Smith had helped my panic subside. I unclenched my hands from the blankets and lay back down. "You could sleep here," I said to Miss Smith. Jamie was in the middle of the bed, so there was room on her side. She shook her head. "No, well, maybe. Just this once." She slid in beside Jamie and pulled the blankets over herself. I pulled my end over myself, feeling again the unexpected softness, the warmth. The next thing I knew, the room was full of light. The sound of church bells was coming through the open windows, and Miss Smith was saying, "Oh, Jamie, you wet the bed." He never did at home. I remembered the surly salesman who'd complained about his evacuees bedwetting, and I gave Jamie such a glare that he burst into tears. "No matter," Miss Smith said, though she looked annoyed. "It'll all wash. Monday we'll buy a rubber sheet in case it happens again." She was all the time having to buy stuff. I said, mostly to ease my worry, "Of course you're rich." Of course she was, with a posh house and all the food, not to mention a bank to hand her money. "Far from it," she replied. "I've been living off the sale of Becky's hunters." She stood up, stretching. "What's with those blasted bells? Have we slept that long? I suppose I should be taking you two to church." "That's what a decent guardian would do," she shrugged. "Too late now." Downstairs she made tea. She told Jamie to put the radio on. A deep, sonorous voice came out of it, very solemn and slow. Something about it made Jamie and me sit to listen. Miss Smith came in from the kitchen and perched on the edge. The voice said, "As the Prime Minister announced just a short time ago, England and Germany are now at war." The church bells had gone silent, Jamie said. "Will they bomb us now?" And Miss Smith nodded and said, "Yes."